to episode 244 of the Various Assembly Podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio in the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who has some breaking news for us today, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, what's happening?
Well, what's happening is you've got breaking news.
You're going to make me say it, huh?
I'm going to make you say it.
So I got a promotion here
You
at
did.
the college.
Yes.
So I am the new vice president for advancement.
And so,
Which is still weird to say.
yeah.
Weird words to come out of my mouth.
Yeah. So I have lots of thoughts on this. But
Okay.
I'll have to restrain myself for the sake of our time limits here. But so are people now required to call you Mr. Vice President?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'd prefer them call me that over Madam Vice President.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to be clear.
I will not be calling you Mr. Vice President.
Okay.
You're still
no one has called me that.
You're still Sloat.
I was saluted this morning by somebody in the hallway.
Okay. All right. So what was the platform of your campaign to earn this this position?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, that I've been here a long time and know it better than anybody else.
I see.
By this, I mean Grace College.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was probably when I had a board member ask me, "What makes you different than other candidates?" I was like, "I've been here."
Okay. I've showed up.
So, yeah.
Okay. So another question I have is, now that you're a vice president,
Yeah.
does that mean you will have lackeys working for you that could help us with the podcast?
I don't think so. I don't think I have. I have people working for me now.
Not lackeys, though.
But not lackeys, and they're not podcast people.
Okay. All right. Still looking for that intern.
Yeah. Which we've never found.
Haven't found it yet. No.
Also looking for a way to make money. You know, that's another thing we're looking for.
I'm going to be honest. I think I've kind of given up on that, John. I've kind of put that one to
Well, at one
rest.
point we thought we could have commercials, and then we
Yeah.
realized we didn't have enough downloads to get commercials.
Yeah.
And that's really where things sit.
Yeah.
I think we need like another couple hundred listens a month or something like that in order to get commercials.
So, listeners, if you want to make that happen,
When you go to sleep at night, just put this on repeat
that's right.
and let it roll
Run it
all
in loop.
night.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, we would love that. Absolutely.
That's what we do. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, congratulations. So if you would like to reach out to the show and congratulate John on his promotion, you can reach us on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. I think we're still on Facebook and on YouTube, but I can't confirm that. Actually, I could confirm it. I just haven't. That's the better way to put that. That's the honest way to put it.
I don't want to confirm it.
I want someone to just deal with all of that for me. I'm going
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
So, however, one thing that we do pay attention to a little bit more closely is 5-star ratings and reviews. So please help us out with that. All right, John, let's talk some sports here.
Okay.
So, because there was a lot of college football, I'm actually going to start with the Mets to give you a chance
Wow.
to check in to see what's going on with them.
So there's something like September's the last month of the season.
Yeah.
And so the Mets are in the wild card hunt, which is very exciting. Okay. Their shortstop, Francisco Lindor, is playing at an MVP level.
All right.
The general thought is Shohei Ohtani is going to get the NL MVP because he's on a 50 homer, 50 stolen base pace.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yes.
But plays no defense. He's a designated hitter.
Okay.
And so the Mets fan in me goes like, well, that's not bad for playing half the time.
Yeah.
Doing half a job for a team. But But it sounds like people are loving them some Los Angeles, and the forgotten city of New York is just hanging out there. Anyway, but we're a half game out of the wild card, chasing the Braves, and then I believe it's the Arizona Diamondbacks and the San Diego Padres. So we're chasing those teams, and I think we got a shot.
All right,
we got a decent shot. If we can make the playoffs, I think we could win a round, maybe two.
Well, that's the thing with baseball playoffs. It feels like random things happen far more often than in, like, say, football.
Yeah.
In baseball, it feels like, and hockey it can happen too. Like, you get some hot pitching, and it carries you past a team that had a better season than you.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does often feel like baseball is, goodness, the best teams absolutely always get in because the season's so long, and the law of averages just works themselves out. Yeah,
yeah. But then, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic. You have such a long season, but then in the playoffs, you could have a team that won 105 games, losing to a team that won 89.
Yep.
So. Yeah, you don't tend to have that kind of thing happen as much, say, in the NBA playoffs or things like that.
Nope.
It happens occasionally where you have like a top seed lose early, but not often.
Or football. It doesn't happen that much in football, although occasionally a wild card will win the Super Bowl or something like that.
That's true. Yep.
But certainly not in college football. Rarely in college football.
Well, this is the first year of an expanded playoff.
Yeah.
I mean, when you only have 4 teams get into the playoff, everybody's good at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you don't really have the Cinderella story so much. Like, honestly, the closest thing you have had in the 4-team playoff was when Ohio State won the national title and essentially snuck in at the very last minute.
With their third-string quarterback?
Quarterback. Came in as the 4th seed.
I was even thinking the only Cinderella story I could really think of from college football is Boise beating Oklahoma.
But that wasn't for a championship. That was in a bowl game.
Right. It was in a bowl game.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting.
Oh, that was one of the most entertaining football games you'll ever see. Yeah. All right, so let's talk some college football.
Yeah.
Week 1 is now in the books.
Nice.
We had week 0 last week. Now this was week 1.
Okay.
And so Ohio State played their first game. They thumped Akron.
The Zips.
The Zips. They didn't hold them to zip, but...
My in-laws were at that game.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. They were at that game. Saw Archie. Archie was there.
Yeah, they unveiled the big statue of him, and he became like I think he's now the 3rd person, maybe the 4th, who was not a band member to dot the I in Script, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah. Jack Nicklaus, Bob Hope, and I think maybe Neil Armstrong.
Okay.
Maybe.
So you got to go to the moon or win 2 Heismans, basically. They said that they played music. The band played music exclusively from the 1970s.
Yeah, I mean they do thematic shows like that, but yeah. So very sluggish first half for Ohio State. Only up 17-3 at the half.
Yeah, I watched the first half.
Second half was much better. Overall, I think I'd give it like a B to B minus grade for the overall grade. The first half I gave like a D. Mm-hmm. Second half I gave like an A minus.
Just kind of knocking off the rest, though. I mean, you got to give them some
sure
some room to run.
The biggest concern was more of the offensive line, though they were playing without their starting left guard, so there was some shuffling going on there, but still concerning in their run blocking. However, a couple of big takeaways. One is Will Howard at quarterback is going to be fine. And Jeremiah Smith, the freshman wide receiver, is everything advertised.
Okay.
Scored 2 touchdowns, made a one-handed catch. And actually, it's interesting. So I think, was it the second play of the game maybe? They ran a bubble screen to him, and he dropped it. You know, freshman nerves, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then he
Twitter was losing it.
Well, and then he had a penalty on the next play, like freshman jitters. Okay, the disappointing thing is if he had caught that pass on that bubble screen, it was a touchdown. It was beautifully executed. I had all the blockers down in front of him. But 2 touchdowns, He's the real deal.
Nice.
So yeah, other headline games. Georgia beat Clemson.
Dominated Clemson.
Yes. Clemson is done. Dabo Swinney is done at Clemson.
Was it his lack of desire to adopt NIL? Is that one of the issues?
It's more the transfer portal than the NIL stuff.
Okay.
He refuses to go out into the transfer portal and improve his team. But I think, most Ohio State fans will say that Ohio State broke Clemson when they beat him in the college football playoff in 2020, and there's an argument to be made for that. But in any case, Clemson is no longer an elite program. They have some problems there. Georgia looked good. Michigan and Oregon both struggled. Michigan struggled against Fresno State, eventually pulled away. Oregon struggled against Idaho before winning by 10.
What do you make of Florida losing so badly to Miami?
Florida's bad.
Yeah.
I think Miami's pretty good this year. Florida's bad. They will not have a winning record this year.
Did you see the press conference afterward where the Florida coach, who was taking a lot of heat, could not get his water bottle open?
Yes.
Yeah. Like he just struggled against the water bottle.
If that's not a metaphor for everything going on there.
Oh, it was bad. It was real bad.
So, yeah.
Mississippi, 76-0.
No. Who are they playing? Come on.
Furman.
Exactly. So a couple of other games of note. Notre Dame beat Texas A&M. That's a good road win for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I think Texas A&M is overrated. They are the most consistently overrated football team in college football.
Well, it's nice to be Catholic.
No, I'm talking about Texas A&M.
Oh, you're talking about
not
Texas
Notre
A&M.
Dame. No. I don't know that Notre Dame's the seventh best team in the country. I think they're pretty good this year, though.
Yeah.
I think they have a legitimate chance of making the playoff.
I love their coach. Their coach
Marcus Freeman.
he makes me want to run through a wall anytime I see him hype up his team.
He played linebacker at Ohio State.
Yeah, I knew that.
So that was one of the high-profile games. And then the other big-profile game matchup between ranked teams was USC beating LSU. Did you see that? That was Sunday night.
I saw the USC hype video.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So USC, a Big Ten school now. That was a Big Ten
That's
over
weird.
SEC.
That's weird.
It is. Victory.
That's
Actually,
weird.
After the game, Lincoln Riley made some comment about basically the Big Ten being better than the SEC or something like that. So he's already all in on the conference. You played one game as a Big Ten member, so.
And Brian Kelly lost his mind after that game. Did you see him yelling at the press conference about
pounding the table?
Yeah, like, dude, it's week 1.
Yeah, but he has this history of losing big games like this.
Yeah,
and so I think LSU fans are running thin on patience with him, and Notre Dame fans are like, yeah, this is what we experienced.
Yeah.
So again, a long way to go. But and Florida State lost again last night. They're 0-2. They are terrible, John.
Yeah.
They came into the season ranked number 10. They will not be ranked when the rankings come out.
Who'd they lose to?
Boston College.
Not good.
The ACC is not good. Clemson's not good. Florida State's not good. I don't know who's going to.
Do you think Clemson is ranked after this week? Because they were 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there.
I think so.
22, 23, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think low 20s. I think they'll still be in the top 25, I think.
Okay. Miami's pretty good. Miami's in the ACC, right?
Yes. They've looked the best, but Florida's not very good either. So I don't know. A lot of question marks there. The sad thing is that because of the way the college football playoff is structured, the champion of the ACC, who could have 3 losses, will get one of the top 4 spots over, say, a 1-loss Big Ten team or a 1-loss SEC team that doesn't win the conference championship. So, yeah.
See, Iowa put up 40 points.
Again, who are they playing?
Illinois State. Yeah, but I didn't know Iowa was capable of putting up more than 21 points.
Yeah. So, just a fun weekend of college football. Enjoyed it immensely. So, anything else in the world of sports that you want to hit on? U.S. Open tennis is going on. I paid zero attention to it.
More celebrities are at Mets games right now, and that's because they go to the U.S. Open, and then they go to the Mets game in the evening.
I mean, basically, those facilities are like
right next to each
other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, John Mayer was at the Mets game last night. Noted weirdo.
Okay. There you go.
Steph Curry was at the Mets game last night.
Oh, good for Stephanie. Ready to move on?
It's fun to, by the way, it's fun to hear Keith Hernandez talk about Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And try to use basketball lingo from the Mets booth as a great first baseman. But it's funny. Anyway, we can move on.
And a great mustache.
Great mustache. Yeah.
Elite level lip sweater.
You know, SNY, who broadcast all the Mets games, originally had a no facial hair policy in the booth, and they changed it when Keith Hernandez came on.
You have to.
Absolutely.
You have to make exceptions for greatness.
Absolutely.
Policies are good. I think general policies are fine, but sometimes you have to acknowledge greatness and make exceptions for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keith Hernandez. You know he gets like $40 every time that Seinfeld episode airs? He talks about it. He's like, hey, that Seinfeld episode must air. I got a $40 check in the mail.
Yeah. Yeah, which I'm sure is, not even pocket change for Keith.
He says, it pays for my dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Or at least an appetizer at one of the restaurants.
Yeah.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
All right. Today, since it's the start of the school year, we are talking about the case for Christian education.
And are we talking higher education?
I think we're talking all of the above.
All of the above. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's do it.
Yeah. So, a little bit of let me give the necessary disclaimer here at the start. Okay. I'm confident neither of us are saying that there is no place for or use for public or secular institutions of education. We're not saying that.
Correct.
They can serve a useful function in our society. Absolutely. And I think every parent needs to make their own decision in terms of what's best for their kids, in terms of whether they send them to a Christian school, whether they homeschool them, whether they send them to a public school. And even as students think about where they want to go to college, there is the need for wisdom to figure out what would be the best opportunity for them.
Yep.
And so don't want to in any way – because I know of a church that essentially required their staff to send their kids to Christian schools, which I felt was a significant overreach of –
Like a Christian school attached to the church?
No. Just had to be a Christian school. Yeah. No public schools.
Did they help with financial assistance for that?
I don't think so. Based on where the church was and the size of the church, I think they probably paid their staff well.
Okay.
But yes. In any case.
Wow.
Yeah, that just seems like a huge overreach to me. Anyways. So interestingly, both of us – well, actually, no, that's not true. You had a mixture of public and private schools growing up, yes?
Yes. I went to public school for a few years. Most of it was Christian education. Public school from like second to fifth grade pretty much, and that was my public school education. And it was I believe it was a financial decision by my parents. I think they preferred to send me to a Christian school,
sure,
but gawked at the price tag.
Yes.
And said, forget you,
Yeah.
and sign us up for public school.
Yeah. Yes. Public school all the way through, public university. My first, I guess, actual experience with Christian education was going to seminary, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, it is different.
So,
but now you're married to a Christian school educator.
I am, yes. And she was public school all the way through as well. So, and then our kids went to – so early on they went to a Christian school when we lived in Chicago. The only way we could afford that was because we had some generous help from family. They were committed to making that happen. And then we moved here, and the public schools seemed like, yeah, I think I mean, we walk in to the elementary school, and there is in the teacher's classroom, there's Bible verses all over the bulletin board. They send home this little reading program thing, like where if you read a certain amount, you can earn prizes and that sort of stuff. And there's a little paragraph in there: if your child wants to read the Bible, here's how you count it. Okay, then.
Yeah.
So
a little different in Warsaw, Indiana than Chicago.
I should be careful saying that, lest the ACLU swoops in. And anyway.
But this was over a decade ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like 15 years ago, basically.
I was trying to be generous towards you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. No.
So yeah. But obviously being here at Grace, my wife teaches at Lakeland Christian Academy, very committed to Christian education. And so both of our sons from essentially 7th grade on were in Christian education. So, all right. That's a little bit of our background. So let's talk about the positive case for Christian education. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of like a starting point? You're going to sell someone on the value of Christian education. Where are you going to start?
I'd probably start with a broad worldview sort of argument. Like there's value to, hey, we see the world as created by God. Sin has entered that world. Christ is the Redeemer, and sort of saying like, and we view everything sort of through that lens.
Yeah.
I think there's value in that. It gives you some hooks to hang things on as you're hearing them about science, about things even like cancer or things like that. It gives you opportunity, hooks to hang things on, basically. That's where I would start.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's helpful to understand that there is no place without a worldview. So it's not like Christian school is unique in having a worldview. Mm-hmm. Public education has a worldview. Every teacher has a worldview. And so the issue is not lack of worldview. It's what is the worldview that the school and the educators have in approaching education. And, you touched on some obvious places where it impacts how you learn about the world, right? Especially in the sciences. But even, I think of literature because obviously my wife is a literature teacher, but she has the privilege and the opportunity that as they read literature to be able to identify themes and tie them to and evaluate them against the biblical worldview, and to help students think biblically from those kind of perspectives. And that's true in literature. That's true at its best. It's true in every subject at a Christian school, that it's taught from a framework that embraces God as creator and human beings as image bearers, but fallen image bearers, and all those things, they matter when you really drill down into the details about how we understand the world. And if you think about education ultimately as formation, like we're forming people,
absolutely,
and not just intellectually, not just with a set of facts or a body of knowledge, but ideally, you're forming what kind of person, or at least playing a part in that. Obviously, parents and church and all those other things influence that as well. But education is formational.
Well, I don't think you can have education without moral framework. Like you can't have education without morally framing somebody or forming somebody. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, there's morality embedded in every form of education. The question is oftentimes though, can you? To what extent can you talk about it, and on what basis can you talk about it? And this is where, and again, there is a place for Christians teaching in public education settings. Absolutely. I think that's a great kind of ministry. But there are significant limitations as to what a Christian can do in a public education context. And so, you can be required to teach things that you either don't agree with or would love to qualify or give an alternative perspective, and you can't do that. And it creates some challenges. Again, I want to stress, I think it's great that believers want to be public school teachers and go into the context, or be in a secular university and teach. There's a place for that, absolutely. But it comes with a set of handcuffs.
Mm-hmm. Some of that's dependent public school to public school, right?
Can be, yeah.
Like you mentioned,
Sure.
When you came to the Holy Land of Warsaw, Indiana, right? They had outlines for you to be able to read Scripture with your kids and
Yes.
things like that.
I don't know if that's happening anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
But
I'm sure that was a different story in the suburbs of Chicago.
yeah, for sure. Well, but even now here, in this, I'll speak generally in this area to protect who I'm talking about. But there's a teacher that I know who teaches at a very early elementary. I'm trying to keep this very general. And this teacher was presented with curriculum that they were required to teach that had some very unbiblical stuff in it.
Yeah.
And thankfully, this teacher had a principal who's a Christian.
And I imagine sympathetic.
Very sympathetic.
Yeah.
This principal basically said, ignore it. Don't teach it. Move on. Like, just don't do it. Well, obviously, that's great for that particular teacher who has the cover of a Christian principal who's willing to basically say, don't worry about it. And I also think too, the thing that I hear regularly is even though there can be a lot of Christians within a public school system in terms of teachers and administrators, but again, their hands are tied in certain ways. So anyway, so worldview is a big deal. I would also add, and this is I think related to but distinct from to some degree, biblical integration.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Directly integrating doctrine and scripture into how you teach specific subjects. And so, a teacher can have a very general kind of Judeo-Christian worldview that they teach out of. But here I'm talking about making specific connections for students to help them see things like, why do we study math? Well, we study math because God is a God of order, and He created an orderly universe. And so as we learn how math helps us understand the world around us, it gives us an insight into the genius and orderliness of the Creator, that kind of thing. Or going back to literature, even non-Christian authors often hit on major themes of guilt and redemption and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And to be able to help students see this author's not a Christian, but they live in a world where those themes of redemption and guilt and sin and regret and all those sorts of things, they don't have an answer for it. An ultimate answer isn't isn't available to them in their worldview.
Yeah, like Lady Macbeth, right?
Yeah.
Cleaning the spots off her hands. I'm not going to quote her because she swears, but and we want to keep this PG.
Yes, you just
For the
scored
car.
major points with my wife. For the
Out
reference.
spots out,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's the sanitized version.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Yes,
But
So,
yeah, that gets at human guilt.
biblical integration. I mean, I think even a few years ago, my wife started teaching Lord of the Flies. Great novel. Mm-hmm. Great novel. Story of refined British boys stranded on an island, and of course they turn into savages.
Right.
And it's a great
Because they are.
Yeah, right. And it's a great picture of human depravity. Of you think that because you're refined, you're above that, but you're not. Those impulses are still in your heart. And so, yeah, just opportunities along those ways. I think also it's important. We kind of hit on this, but we talked about education as formation. Part of the beauty of Christian education is it allows you to be explicitly and intentionally spiritual, to pursue spiritual
Sure.
formation.
Yeah. There's an element of growing your faith
Exactly.
along the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through chapels, through devotions, through
Yeah, discipleship opportunities.
Even intentional times of prayer throughout a school
Yeah.
day.
And even just specific curriculum, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Students having a class on New Testament or Old Testament or basic doctrines or whatever it might be. Like
Yeah.
specific, intentional, spiritual formation. Lots that we could say there. But it's a great blessing when the educational institution that you're sending kids to or being a part of yourself is actually partnering with you, your family, the church to pursue spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh, there's more. Time's getting away from us here. But I think I would just say there is I might get in trouble for this, but we'll see.
Oh, boy.
One of the arguments that I hear for people sending their kids to public schools, and again, just to be clear, I'm not saying you shouldn't send your kids to public schools. That's a decision for you and the Lord to sort out. Is they present, especially younger kids, well, they're going to be salt and light. They're going to be essentially like missionaries. And I just want to say, is your second grader really ready to do that? Like, really? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not sure he or she is. Like, now you might be able to have an influence by volunteering in the classroom or getting to know parents or that sort of thing. Like, sure. But I don't think little second grade Johnny is ready to be the missionary.
Let's keep my name out of it. Okay.
I said Johnny. So anyway, I just don't think that's a great argument the other direction. And then lastly, I'll just mention more and more, a lot of the environments in a growing number of public schools are just toxic.
Yeah.
Like they're the cesspool of the culture is evident in the hallways everywhere you go. So I won't give details on that, but I did want to end. I do want to acknowledge that there are some potential pitfalls
Yeah.
of Christian education. Typically when it's not done well, I should say. Mm-hmm. Any that in particular come to your mind in terms of pitfalls?
Yeah. I mean,
as a
graduate,
as one who went through.
Yeah. I'll say one more thing on the positive side. Mm-hmm. I think there's a great opportunity for greater relationship with teachers in a smaller setting, like a private Christian education. Like I think
absolutely.
Like I think of my history teacher, and I think of not so much what he taught me about history, but talking about even just like having a positive role model to look up to. And I remember talking about baseball. That's what I really remember talking about with him. Anyway, but the pitfalls I think about, I think about that there just aren't as many opportunities in Christian education as there is with public funding and these things. So I remember one thing I did at one Christian school was I was on the golf team, loved playing golf, loved doing that. Moved to a new Christian school. Well, we have soccer, basketball, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yep.
There's a lack of opportunity. Another thing I think about, and I don't know how to put this, but one of the things that my brother is very critical of our Christian education is instead of giving like the whole, complete, nuanced, very difficult to understand truth, there were teachers would use useful lies, basically, to get you moving in the right direction. And like in dealing with children, there's always, I think, a place for that, to bring them along later to some of those things.
Well, let's call them perhaps oversimplified statements, like oversimplifying things.
Yeah.
I use the category, as you well know, of useful lie in teaching language.
Sure.
That's a different category.
So, yeah, I know one of the things that my brother chides against was like, I just feel like you gave me a simplified version of this when everything's just far more complex. So that was one, and then the last, and this is connected to opportunity, but academic excellence and seeing things through. I think I know I was part of a Christian school that would hire teachers that did not have the credentials at times for what they needed. And curriculum would suffer, things like that. I remember my dad going into a parent-teacher conference, and my dad's I almost said bull in a china shop, but I want something with a hammer. He's but he goes in and is like, well, what's your plan for the curriculum for the rest of the year? And it was like, you've only made it through 3 chapters of the textbook in the first 9 weeks of class. Like, what's the plan for the rest of the year? Are you going to only get through 12 chapters of this 25-chapter book? Like, what's – and teacher didn't have a plan. Teacher didn't there was a lack of commitment, not just to academic excellence, but just excellence in general.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes that's a reflection of lack of resources. I mean – it can be challenging in some disciplines, I think in particular of science, to get good science teachers in general. Like if you ask the public schools struggle to get good science teachers. And as a general rule, Christian schools tend to pay less than the public schools. And so it's even harder to get science teachers. But yeah, you're right. It all just depends on the outlook of the Christian school itself, right? Is the goal just to shelter kids from the awful world out there?
Yeah.
And so or is it, well, we're so focused on them loving Jesus that we really aren't that interested in academics? Well, that's not good. It shouldn't be youth group plus a little bit of math and science kind of thing. Like that's not what a Christian school is.
Yeah.
So there are bad versions of that. I mean, I can't remember if I told the story on pod. I actually taught middle school.
Yeah, that's right.
Middle school earth science at a Christian school for like 3 months. While I was raising support to go on staff with the crew. After I'd graduated, I'd married Kate. We were living in Colorado.
And remind me what your undergrad was in.
I was a telecommunications major.
So somehow
I had absolutely no qualifications for that. And this is a bad sign. When I was interviewing for the job, the administrator, who's a pastor, not an educator, a pastor, he said to me, and I was explaining to him like, I don't have a science degree. The only science class I took in my college education was a 1 credit hour astronomy class. That's it. That's what I got. And he said, and he looked at me, and he said this unironically. He said to me, "Can you walk and chew gum?" Well, yeah. You should be fine.
Wow. Okay.
It's like just stay a chapter ahead of the kids. Okay.
Wow.
Well, so anyway, there are bad versions out there.
So have I told you about going back to my Christian schools that I went to? One in Pittsburgh I went to, and I ran a table. It was fine. That uninteresting.
Yeah.
I went to the one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Have I told you this story?
This feels vaguely familiar, but I don't remember the details. Tell it again.
So I drove on the campus, and this will be a short story, but campus was gone.
Gone.
Turns out a tornado had ripped through the campus.
Okay.
And it was on the side of a church. So it was a Christian school attached to a church.
Right.
Church and school were totally wiped out by this hurricane.
Tornado.
Tornado.
Yeah.
Yes. Just gone. And like it almost looked like a wasteland. So one of the things that this church and school had a commitment to was being debt-free. They're very Dave Ramsey.
Okay.
And so because they did not get enough money from FEMA to rebuild everything, they just said, we'll rebuild it when we get the money. And basically they have a half-built building, and it is an absolute eyesore. And they're like, the church is meeting in the Seventh-day Adventist church because it's not occupied on Sundays.
Right.
And the Christian school is at another church down the road.
Okay.
And has been for 4 years. And they just refused to take out a loan to build the rest of the campus.
Okay.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Yeah.
I drove up and I was like, it used to be right there.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think we both fully acknowledge and have experience with bad versions of Christian
Sure.
education. But I think good Christian education is a great gift from God. And I think people should pursue it if there is a reasonable opportunity for them to experience it.
Yeah.
All right, there's more we could say there, but it is time now for what?
Do we want to talk about next week?
You want to talk about that now?
I figure if somebody's going to tune out, it's going to be about now.
Okay, so John would like to interrupt this portion of the program to remind you that we are beginning a series starting next week.
I don't think we've told them yet. They don't know.
That's true. Remind is the wrong word. Announce to you.
Okay.
That we are starting a series on Mere Christianity, the book by C.S. Lewis. I think we're going to take, do we say 4 weeks?
4 weeks, yeah. It's broken up into 4 parts. Book 1, Book 2, Book 3, Book 4.
Okay.
You want to say Book 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I was thinking about this. I went, oh snap,
Yeah, we should probably announce that.
we should probably announce that. Okay,
Okay, I'm going to re-rack that. Ready?
let's do it.
Here we go. Time now for This Day in Sports History.
This day in sports history, September 3rd. Re-rack, is that a telecommunications terminology? Okay, yeah. I've never heard it before. Re-rack. It's like pool. September 3rd, 1904, for the only time in the Olympic game history, there's a throw-off in the discus after American Martin Sheridan and Ralph Rose, Americans, tie with the best throw of 128 feet and 10 and a half inches in St. Louis. Sheridan wins at 127 feet.
Yeah, how do you feel? Because this has come up in the last couple of Olympics, where in some of these events there's a tie. Like there was with the high jump this year,
right? And they just call it a tie.
Well, I think in the high jump was one of the events. Previously, they had agreed to a tie, and then for this one, like, no, we're going to compete it out.
It's just up to the athletes,
I guess. Yeah.
I want to see some sort of standard thing, and I think paper, rock, scissors needs to be the standard thing. That's one
approach.
And I think it would be very high stakes and it'd be very exciting. 1928, future Baseball Hall of Famer Ty Cobb records his 400th 189th and final career.
4,189th.
Oh, 4,189th career. Sorry, I read that way strangely. Career hit as a pinch hitter for the Philadelphia A's in a 6-1 loss against the Washington Senators.
A record subsequently broken by Pete Rose.
Pete Rose.
Yep.
What are your feelings on Pete Rose? I think he's getting into the Hall
After he's dead.
After he posthumously.
Yeah, they're not going to give him the satisfaction.
Yeah, I think.
But I
that's
think
right.
eventually he'll get in.
Yeah. 1950. Oh my goodness. Giuseppe Nino Farina wins inaugural Formula One World Driver Championship by taking out the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in an Alfa Romeo.
That's a kind of vehicle, yes.
Okay. Wins by three points from Juan Manuel Fangio.
Sure.
I don't know. I didn't know Formula One had 3 points.
Well,
it's a series of races, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. 1972 Finnish runner. Love the Finns. Lasse Viren scores a famous victory in the 10,000 meter race at the Munich Olympics in world record time, 27 minutes 38 seconds.
Yep.
1972. And finally, 2022. C.J. Stroud throws for 223 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the number 2 Ohio State over number 5 Notre Dame. I remember that game.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was still Brian Kelly, right? 2022?
No. Well, yeah. No.
That had been Brian Kelly's last year.
No, that was Marcus Freeman.
Was it Freeman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because he was making his debut back in his stadium that he played in as a player.
Nice.
Yes. That game is memorable for the fact that Jackson Smith and Jigma got hurt, and it ruined his season. He was coming back after a massive Rose Bowl performance where he was looking to – he was widely regarded as he's the best receiver in college football, and he gets hurt in the first game. So anyway. So who do you like out of that?
Let's see. You want to go with the Finnish runner?
You love yourself the Finns.
I love the Finns.
Okay, we can go with the. I'm a fan of the Finns as well. We can go with that.
Very warm and kind people for such a cold land.
Yes, very true. Very true. One thing you liked.
So my wife and I are watching through the TV show Lost again.
Oh, so good.
And we're just finishing up season 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the more I watch this show through, the more I go, this makes total sense. And I think after my first maybe 2 or 3 passes through Lost, I've gone like, they just lose the plot at season 4. And the more I watch it, I'm like, no. This totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I can explain that it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
But
yep, for sure.
Seems to.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I think one of the many things I appreciate about Lost is how they mess with your perception of time.
Yeah.
And, one of the genius moves was, early in the show, they're doing these flashbacks to give you a sense of who these people were before they got to the island. And then they start doing these flash forwards.
Yeah, season 4, they start flash forwards.
Yeah, but you don't know it at first because they do it in such a way that you're like, oh, that could have been, and then you realize that's a flash forward, which means he's getting off the island or she's getting off the island. So, yeah. One of my all-time favorite shows.
I still think there's plot holes.
Oh, there are, absolutely.
There's some just like, well, what happened to this point?
Yeah.
But
overall,
it's been. I have also enjoyed I've taken to looking up the characters in relation to their named philosophers.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Like John Locke and his blank slate sort of theory of man and how, that guy gets a blank slate on the island,
Yeah.
And then a couple of times, actually,
Yeah.
spoilers. And then one character that I've never figured out, I was like, how are they doing Sawyer? How are they doing Sawyer? And then I realized in one, he's sitting there reading Iran. And sort of his just like, man exists as a solely self-interested being. And I was like, that's it.
There you go.
He's a Randian.
Yeah. Well, and even like there's a female character on there. Charlotte Staples Lewis.
Oh, interesting. No, I did not pick up on that.
C.S. Lewis. Yeah.
Wow.
And then the scientist Faraday.
Yeah.
Daniel Faraday. Of course, the actual scientist was Michael Faraday, I believe. So there's all of like there are layers to that onion you can just keep peeling over and over.
There's got to be a good book written about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go with I had so last week was first week of classes, and I met during our welcome weekend an Albanian pastor and his American wife who were dropping off their son, who's a biblical studies major here at Grace.
Oh, nice.
And we got to talking about the fact that I had been to Albania back in 1994, 30 years ago. And so we talked a lot about that. And then we were just talking about how there's a lack of like theological education available to train pastors and that sort of thing. And so he expressed his interest in wanting to like, I wish we could do something like, well, we have a program where we've started some partnerships with a school in Serbia, and now we're starting one in Sierra Leone. So how about I connect you with our guy here on campus? And we had lunch with them on Friday and had a great conversation about some possibilities.
Nice.
So just fun to connect.
You going to
with
return
them.
to Albania?
I said to I said to Gabe, I said, when we set these partnerships up, the pattern is usually like we send like once a year, we send one of our faculty over. I said, I have dibs on the first year. I'd love to go back 30 years ago. I'm sure it's completely different. So that is my one thing I liked. All right, John, a reminder that we will be talking about C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, most people, they've tuned out.
Mere Christianity.
Yeah, they're gone.
Part 1. But we have talked about college football. We have talked about the case for Christian education. We have talked about Finnish runner Lasse Viren.
Sounds good.
Okay. We have talked about Lost. And we have talked about an Albanian pastor and his wife. So I think, by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.